Um, Sharon, thank you so much for a truly humbling introduction. And it's really just humbling to be here in this space. It always is. Um, whether I'm doing a workshop here, or whether I'm the MC of a poetry slam, or I'm just here as a guest for a different event. It never escapes me that this was Theodore Roethke's home. And I am always just honored to be part of the story of this house and part of the mission to keep the arts in the area alive and thriving, as well as just arts in the country in general, because we've never needed it more. I'm going to start with the title poem of Lost in America. Those people that know me know that I am a big fan of Americana and nostalgia. But while it's a wonderful thing for a lot of people, and we all, people are amazed by it, they're enthralled by it, they want to study it, but it's nostalgia for a reason. And sometimes things fade out of our pop culture for good reasons, and sometimes there are things that we actually get to miss. And this poem is about the changing landscape, specifically in small town America. Excuse me, are you lost? Need a room? You look like you aren't from here, deer in the headlights, like someone who stumbled upon hellfire while looking for heaven's safe, open arms. I understand. Surely the rusty sign out front is off-putting, and the neon's no good. It hasn't welcomed people in years. But the beds are soft, and if you find any stains on the floor, know they are as old as the carpet. Truth is, we're good people here. As good as the coffee at the town diner is hot. COVID and population loss couldn't close its doors. It's a survivor for now, and there isn't a Starbucks around for miles. Good thing, too, their nasty sludge has no heart. Oh, I'm sorry if you like that place. I'm sure it comforts you, like how a baby sleeps better in his own crib. We like safety too, the kind of safety that comes from home, a home that is just ours. Just like the park down the street, the kids still have fun. They don't care if the paint is chipped on the merry-go-round. Like the local grocery store with ancient floors that we can't seem to get clean. And the library, yes, we still read here, where we can check out books about animals, the American dream, about a time when our main street wasn't a graveyard, abandoned storefronts and shells of motor courts. The bars and churches we got, but not much else since folks like you stopped visiting. Nope, all we have is the diner, rusty amusements, high-priced produce and history books, but most of all, each other. We live together and we'll die together, but at least we know who we are. So why don't you stay a while, even if just for a night? No, we don't have McDonald's and Walmart, and no, this place isn't the Hilton or even a Super 8, but we have our souls. And until this town finally dies, that's enough. Besides, you can feel safe in those places anytime. You can find them anywhere in America, off any exit ramp, where a city looks like everywhere else, where your individuality is lost. As lost as you look right now in your own country that you didn't even know existed. Thank you. So on the topic of Americana and McDonald's and corporate America, I think that, some of these places like McDonald's have been around so long that they really become part of our nostalgia. And I think that that's interesting. It's been just long enough that even my generation, we grew up with it. And again, sometimes that nostalgia is good, and then sometimes you look back on it and you realize that maybe it shouldn't have been romanticized the way it was for different reasons. And so this piece is actually about a promotion that McDonald's had last year. The adult Happy Meals. I don't know if any of you saw anything about that, had one, but they were a collab with Cactus Plant Flea Market. I think it's a boutique of some kind. Anyway, this piece is about the experience of going back to childhood to experience a Happy Meal as an adult. The poem is called About Adult Happy Meals, appropriately, I suppose. There's something about tearing into that fragile cardboard box, covered in long forgotten characters, that brings back memories, just as the contents within do. McNuggets, predictable, comfortable, like a hug from grandma after a hard day of being bullied because you went to school with last year's Ninja Turtles lunchbox, since the new model was just too expensive. Sure, they seem smaller than they used to be, but they're still that perfect vehicle for McDonald's barbecue sauce, a condiment your wife says is just for kids, but you know better. And the fries, golden as the arches outside, and as thin as you were before your metabolism slammed the brakes, and you could no longer muster the energy you had before high school, when you had to face long nights of solving algebra problems and writing pointless essays about nursing home safety and other topics that your teenage self just couldn't relate to. Even when you were sick, because you knew drowning in homework would be worse than drowning in mucus. Of course, last but not least, is the real prize, the toy inside. You throw all of your old ones away before leaving for college, the same ones that others are selling on eBay and making a fortune. These four-eyed figurines sure are interesting to look at, as they bring back as much nostalgia as one could get browsing an old Sears wish book. But man, they just don't make them like they used to, do they? And then you see the price tag, $11 for mediocre food and plastic. And it hurts more because you are the one who paid way too much for it. Reality hits. You are 40. This is your life, and the fun comes to an end. Thank you. All right, we're going to have a little more fun with corporate America for a second. This one, for those of you that remember Kmart, because it hasn't been gone that long, but you probably remember the blue light specials, like the lights that go off and you go and buy stuff because it was cheaper or whatever. Well, that's the title of this poem, and it is about shopping at a superstore. But the message, I think, really comes out at the end, so I won't say anything more. Blue light special. Attention shoppers, we'd like to direct your attention to multiple sales happening right now throughout the store. In clothing, hundreds of styles await you. The same looks all of your friends are sporting, the ones they harassed you for not purchasing weeks ago. Better late than never, am I right? Sure, they'll call you a Johnny-come-lately, but at least you showed up. We knew you would. And groceries, be sure to stock up on all of the new varieties of Coke, Oreos, frozen pizzas that are better than delivery, hot dogs endorsed by the pro athlete du jour. And don't forget the all-new Kraft mac and cheese Cheetos collab. Let's make that stuff even more orange. Just as unhealthy as before, but hey, produce doesn't come in bright, colorful boxes. That good-for-you stuff isn't on sale anyway. It never is. Best to stock up on comfort food. And when you outgrow those jeans, just head on over back to clothing to start spending money on that new wardrobe. And don't forget to visit toys. It's never too early to start your holiday shopping. See the gardening department for our artificial Christmas tree and July sale. This year's hot toys are already available to buy at an insane 5% off. And who doesn't want to snag the new Tickle Me Furby LOL surprise for $95 instead of $100? No one. So hurry up and get yours now. Supplies won't last, and we can't guarantee when the next shipment is coming. And you don't want little Timmy crying because Santa's magic couldn't come through for him on Christmas morning, which is only 5 months away. And before you leave, be sure to head over to Sporting Goods. Those trendy new firearms, the same ones promoted by the GOP and NRA, are ready for you to take home today to protect your loved ones. You want to be a patriot. We know you do. Just be careful to keep them separate from those Christmas presents that you bought over in toys. We won't be held liable for anything that happens at home or elsewhere. Thank you, shoppers. We appreciate your business, and we hope you enjoy the products that you've enjoyed purchased from us as much as we've enjoyed purchasing you. Come again soon. We know you will. Thank you. All right. So this one, it's a little bit less dark, I suppose, than the ending of that one. Something else that people know, if they know me very well, especially over the last couple of years, is that I really like sneakers. It's something that probably goes back to my childhood when and still am a big sports fan, but my family wasn't necessarily the wealthiest. And so it was a difficult thing for us to be able to afford these great new sneakers that would come out every year. So I guess in a way I'm reliving a little bit of the nostalgia I was talking about. This piece, though, is on the surface about sneakers, but it's really about something else. And I'm not going to say, so I'll let you try to think about that as I move forward. This piece is called All White Air Force Ones. Time to get some mud on those crispy white kicks. The ones you stalked the Twitter bots for and still ended up paying more than retail. They look better on feet than they ever will on a shelf, along with other forgotten trinkets in red boxes. Take some time to love them before they're discolored by age. At least you'll always remember that puddle you'll jump in that will remind you of the innocent days before you started school, and the orange pop that woman with whom you'll fall in love will spill on them, leading to your first date. And the game when you'll go all out, channeling old school legends, and hit that last second shot from downtown for the win. Scuff and heel drag like scars be damned. Nothing perfect lasts forever. Diamond rings lose their luster. Those blonde locks will turn gray. Ancient kings turn to dust within gilded sarcophagi. So get those fresh sneakers out of that shoebox coffin before they crumble. Let them breathe and enjoy every second of the life you'll share together, stains and all. Thank you. So, yes, I identify as a nostalgia lover and a sneakerhead, and someone that has a deep distrust for corporate America. But I also identify with being a dad. And so I'm going to read this piece now, and it's called What It Means to Be a Dad. And so here it is. What it means to be a dad, it's giving up who you were, like finally donating those old clothes that you love to Goodwill, even though you swear you'll fit in them again one day. You won't. Let's be honest. It's acknowledging that you're in for fewer date nights because no one is around to watch them while you're out, and accepting that an hour per night watching real crime docs in bed will have to do. It's gaining a few pounds or more because they'll talk you into McDonald's no matter how hard you try to tell them that McNuggets are pink slime. Home-cooked meals don't come with a toy inside, and you can't put barbecue sauce on a side salad. It's turning off the football game for Peppa Pig, even though her attitude and little British voice haunt your dreams. After all, you've already seen Tom Brady win it all, and you can see it again next year. It's tolerating those earworms with cliched lyrics and no guitars because their tablets died, no matter how many times you told them to keep the stupid things charged. And they hate listening to Hank Williams in the car. It's saying no to a colleague when he invites you to the bar, no matter how much you need that night out, because a big test is coming. She needs a study partner, and you can't say no, even if work is hell. It's losing hours of sleep because he woke up crying at 3 a.m. and he won't be able to fall asleep if you don't hold his little hand. Someone needs to protect him from the monster under the bed. So armor up, Sir Exhausted. It's about to be a long day. It's all of these things and more. It's living no longer for yourself, but for someone else. And every I love you, Dad, reminds you that you wouldn't have it any other way. Thank you. So if we're talking about identity, like that one. If we're talking about identity, I also identify as a writer. And I work with students, we write together, we have a good time doing that. This particular piece is an interesting one because this, and one of the lessons I tell kids all the time, I try to tell them is don't throw your scraps away. Even if the piece doesn't turn out in the first draft as something you think can be really great, that doesn't mean that there won't be something later that you can pull from to actually create something that's really interesting. Sometimes it just takes time. Well, if that's true, and it is, then this piece is my greatest example. Unlike many of my college scraps that I had saved over the years from creative writing classes, I was able to turn most of them into something I liked, except this. This piece sat as a computer file, no matter how many times I tried to edit it, for, almost 2 decades. And then it was actually the Roethke chapbook project that gave me the inspiration to finally revisit this and turn it into something. So this is obviously very different from the piece that I wrote almost 20 years ago, but this is what it is now. This is called Downpour. An upward glance revealed clouds hovering in from the west. A terrible downpour was upon us. It made my arthritic joints pop, and an old familiar sadness set in as I thought about the families, the children, who only hours ago were basking in the warm summer sun, obviously planning picnics, bike rides, and play dates in the park. The kind of day I remembered so often with my parents and siblings before the divorce, before having to spend sunny days mowing lawns and behind cash registers, trying to save for that Mustang that I never could afford, before the war took my brother and the bottle took my sister, when I was forced to reckon with the fact we'd never play one more game of catch. Outside, neighbors scurried like squirrels, packing up their backyard cookouts, hoarding delicious T-bones in ballparks. And then I saw children skipping home to escape the marble sky, finally tripping, falling into the loving arms of their mothers, fathers, protectors. Too bad, I thought. They should have checked the forecast. And then I thought of that last childhood summer, that last game at the park, when I dropped that can of corn fly ball that would have given us the game. Don't worry, my brother said. We'll get them next time. But I was too busy blaming the drizzle that started to fall from the sky in the last inning. It caused the ball to slip out of my mitt. Too angry to appreciate the moment, the final moment, for there was no next time. Why was I so naive? I should have checked the forecast. Rain needled the roof and windows. Life was absent from the now silent street, reminding me of the emptiness within. And I felt every bit 80 years old, sitting beside the window. I prayed everyone would make it home through the storm so they could enjoy one more day in the sun, one more game of catch. Thank you. So another poem about writing, since that's the topic we're on, is about, I suppose it's about the problems that can exist when you try to not just be inspired by other great writers, but when you try to emulate them and you try to make their identity yours, which is unfortunately something that I see a lot. People trying to look cool and stuff like that, and like work with edgy, like try to write like edgy poets, which I have no problem with that. I like being edgy. But there's some of these writers out there that are just like, should we be, maybe not, we're going to respect their work, but do we really glorify who they are as a person? This piece deals with a little bit of that. This poem is called, I Tried to Write Like Bukowski, as in Charles Bukowski. All right. So here it is. I tried to write like Bukowski, but unlike the plethora of internet wannabe hacks, I just couldn't find the words. Couldn't come up with the right way or muster enough energy to write about vomit on barroom floors or cracked pavement, or use verse to slander an ex and any woman who looks like her, to compensate for my own nights spent solo on my couch, watching Thundercats and eating Crunch Berries and Ben and Jerry's and mesh hoop shorts and band tees. Besides, with no whiskey, cigarettes, and casual misogyny involved, my poem clearly wouldn't be edgy enough. It was no use. I'm not a drunk, a sexist, a racist, or a homophobe. And I like it when my words actually mean something, say something, not like the ramblings of some lonely slob in an LA apartment whose bad habits overshadow any of his justified criticisms of an America too obsessed with carbon copy celebrities, naive consumers of anything advertised in magazines, and those who are all too eager to cast aside all authenticity, all in an attempt to find acceptance among the general population who have no idea who they are, only who they'd love to be, who they'd love to imitate. So I tore up my scribbles and ramblings, and in frustration by myself, I yelled, "Damn you, Bukowski, and damn everyone who tries to mimic you, all for the sake of looking cool to living room rebels and a few likes on social media poetry posts, forsaking art, decency, and honesty in the process." Then it hit me. I wrote down the words to this poem, and I knew I had finally succeeded in writing something like Charles Bukowski. And I had done so in a way that wouldn't make me lose my lunch, like old Chuck's stomach after an all-night bender, or my pride, or my morality, or my own identity. Thank you. Most of the stuff that I'm reading tonight actually comes from the new book, but I am pulling out a couple of poems also from my previous collections that I'm really proud of, and I haven't had a chance to read them in a not just a venue like this, but an event like this. This piece was written inspired by the early days of the pandemic, and a lot of the fears I had during that time. And one of my biggest fears was waking up one morning and realizing that I'm sick, that I'm struggling to breathe. And this piece incorporates some of the other things I always seem to show up in my work. This piece is called Dead End. You used to love driving at night to escape ghosts and mundane realities. The road meant happiness in the form of exit ramps and taillights of fellow midnight Kerouacs in the distance ahead. Like you, they knew the world's greatest love song was the hum of the engine and the percussion of tires on pavement, with some Willie Nelson playing on the radio. The welcoming thought that a good night's sleep could be found at a mom and pop motel, and that a cup of coffee, a club sandwich, or both could be served by a smiling waitress at any hour, or streetlights, that gorgeous neon, appeared on the horizon. Even the smell of gasoline during an early AM fill-up would make your heart beat faster, for as long as that motor was running, you felt alive. But the highway is dead now. Those city lights don't shine anymore. The 24-hour diners are closed. The jukeboxes no longer play. You're lucky if you can find an open McDonald's drive-thru where a masked worker nervously accepts your card and gives you a greasy burger and fries that you now wonder if you should even eat. And there's no room at the Motor Inn. It's closed, perhaps permanently. You can't tell. But you sure know the road no longer feels like home. Home is where you're stuck in late night silence. You no longer have the miles ahead to look forward to when the sun rises. Instead, when your weary head hits the pillow, all you can do is pray in loneliness that life will return one day to the interstates, that this dead end isn't forever, and that when you wake up, you'll still be able to breathe. So I guess that poem is about a little bit of adversity. And obviously, like everybody else, I faced it. We all had. That was pandemic adversity. This one is adversity that I faced in my 20s, which I still swear up and down was the most difficult time of my life, for a whole lot of different reasons. I feel like people warn you that your teenage years are tough and all that stuff, but I don't think enough people warn you about your 20s and all the stuff that goes into that. This piece is about that, and it's using a boxing metaphor to prove my point. The poem is called The Fight of My Life. The day I turned 21, someone rang the bell, and I wasn't ready. Before I could gather my thoughts, 9/11 cold-cocked me. First tower, right hook to the face. Second tower, the left. Pentagon, cross body. And Flight 93 leveled me a low blow. One that the ref didn't see, of course. Brain fog set in. The crowd chanted glass jaw. Or was it glass Jared? I didn't know, and it didn't matter. My naive belief in safety was violated. Round 2 started college, facing a barrage of stick and move, a new student loan here, an exam there, papers due at midnight, and the loneliness that comes from being hours from home. I should have been ready for this. What did I do wrong? I could rope-a-dope with the best of them, but the jabs, expectations, responsibilities kept coming, and it left me asking, how long could I stay on my feet? Only the onslaught wasn't over in the third. I just moved to the opposite side of the ring, to the other side of the classroom podium. My opponent didn't pull its punches, and neither did my students. Last year, writing mattered here. Morningstar, more like morning shit. So many corkscrews, so many bolos. Am I bleeding? I certainly was fading. The bob and weave wasn't working. My haymakers weren't landing. By the time we were sent to our corners, I wondered if there was anything left in the tank, if my puncher's chance was now only a distant memory. I gathered my thoughts and senses and found my footing by the start of the fourth when I heard "I love you" repeated from the sea of suits and graphic tees, alcohol and crackerjack that surrounded us. She loves me? It made me feel like a contender, like I could go the distance. Hell, like I could maybe win this thing. Hell, adrenaline started pumping, and I suddenly stopped feeling the sting from its fists. But the bastard wouldn't fall, and soon I could no longer hear my lone fan's affection. Perhaps she's fallen for my foe, or the popcorn salesman, or maybe she just doesn't believe in me. Then a hard uppercut to the chin from out of nowhere had me on the ropes. A few more slugs, and my poor carcass hit the canvas. I was spitting blood, seeing nothing. All I could do was think about the towel that I wished someone would throw in, the bottle of pills on my desk that I wanted to swallow so I could be put out of my misery. But as I heard the countdown and my battered mind almost slipped from consciousness, I felt the call to get up from my grandma who raised a fighter, students who deserved an inspiration, someone I'd marry one day who'd accept me for me, along with my wins and losses, and babies who needed the father I never had. 8, 9, and I lifted myself off the mat. Life hadn't found a way to kill me yet. Like frost, I had miles to go before I slept. Too many years of taking falls left me bruised but not broken. Now I'm recovered, today and always. So bring it on. Give me all you got. And know that while you might knock me down, you'll never, ever knock me out. Thank you. All right. So I'm going to read a couple of poems that I think we're gonna shift away from personal adversity, and we're gonna shift to the history portion of the show. History is something that I love. It's something I care a great deal about. But I think that with all of the talk about what history should be preserved, how dare you take anything down, the stuff that's being hid, it makes me think of we need to really look at history with more nuance. That there are some things that are worth preserving that we need to save from wrecking balls that might knock them down. And then there are other things in our history that we don't talk nearly enough about. And we need to. We need to for us, and we need to for the future of this country. We'll start with a piece of history that I am so thankful was preserved because it relates directly to the arts. This piece is called "Can You Hear Me?" Or can you hear them? And the poem was written inspired by the Ryman Auditorium in Nashville, Tennessee, which has a great history of the arts behind it, and almost met its doom in the 90s. And thankfully, that did not end up being the case. It actually was just taught earlier this month at Tennessee Tech by a professor there. So that's always a cool thing. It's never something I thought would happen. This piece, let's see here. Ryman Auditorium, Can You Hear Them? It's directed to an artist, any artist that just finished performing there. Sometime after your show, long after the sun had gone down, its rays no longer shining through the old girl's beautiful stained glass. After your adoring crowd had parted, their cheers no longer sending vibrations through the ancient seats, their feet no longer stomping, complementing the beat of the bass drum. Did you sit down in one of those wooden pews and look around, admiring the history and the floorboards of that stunning old stage that you just played, in the walls that surround you, that surrounded the people who knew every word, every note of every song you played? Did you smile because you could still hear their wild applause and pleas for just one more number to ease their minds and warm their hearts? And could you hear something else floating over the balcony? The sharp cries of hellfire and brimstone coming from the mouth of the preacher on a hot 1890s summer night, long before automobiles and large crowds owned Lower Broadway. Words that frightened the room full of sinners, reminding those with nothing left to lose in life that it could be even worse than the next, but gave them hope that their greatest reward could await them through love and charity. Those first fiddles, banjos, and pedal steel guitars that played the same stage as you, that became the foundation for everything that symbolizes this city to this day. When the old church became something more, a place to earn salvation through song, where sounds of sorrow, loneliness, and suffering reminded all that they were not alone. The electric guitars and drums when they joined the acoustic strings on the hardwood, the jingle, rumble, and roar of Roy's Wabash Cannonball, the laughter that many brought to audiences along with smiles to the faces of people who needed them most. Old Hank singing about the lovesick blues that first night when he brought the house down 7 times, just as he would do several more before his broken heart stopped. Along with the music of those who idolized them, Patsy's crooning and about sweet dreams, midnight walks, and crazy hearts. Loretta's stories about coal miner pride and strong women who knew when to take a stand. Bill's whispered truths about the temptation of city lights and the lives of the po folks. Little Jimmy's funny tales of cold taters and birds of paradise. And Johnny and June's promises of eternal love and to fight for those who had no one to lean on. And the cries from those who mourned when the Opry left, moved to an updated, flashier home outside the city limits, away from the people. A dark precursor to the days when the call was made for the wrecking ball, when Nashville was ready to embrace skyscrapers, bachelorette parties, big city life, big city money, and forgot its soul, the legacy upon which it was built. Of course, though, you also heard the jubilation of the relieved and delighted when it was spared, refurbished, renovated, when music brought crowds back, allowing it to exist along with the same modernity that litters every other American street, allowing you to grace that stage and give a little humanity to an audience, a city, a nation, a world that needs more of it. That's why, after the show, when you signed the guest book, along with over a century of names preceding yours, it wasn't just scribbling letters on a page. You sensed the Holy Spirit and all of the other ghosts who reside there. They've welcomed you. You're one of them. And you'll be there long after your body is buried in southern ground. Another angel singing, "Will the circle be unbroken?" in perfect harmony with the rest. Another chapter in the gospel of the Mother Church. And then this piece is the dark side of history, the kind of stuff we should be talking a lot more about. Most of you probably know about Native American boarding schools and the awful history that exists, not just within this country, but in Canada. The stories are coming out more and more all the time about the abuse that occurred there. bodies that are found there that weren't recorded. Just horrific, horrific, horrific stuff. All sponsored by our government, at least in this country. And I live 5 minutes walking distance from the remains of one of those schools. I pass by it every day, and it haunts me every single day. This piece is written about that. This piece is called To the Students of the Mount Pleasant Indian Industrial Boarding School, 1893 to 1934. I am sorry. There is nothing I can say that would adequately express my sadness, my discomfort, and my shame every single time I drive by the decrepit remains of that American concentration camp. On my way home to hug my own children, my white children, who will never have to suffer as you did. I do not expect forgiveness for a race, for a country that doesn't deserve it. How could anyone expect you to erase our atrocities from your blackboard? Like we eliminated your culture, language, your freedom, all in the name of education, of killing the Indian to save the man. As if you couldn't be both, as if you were somehow less human than the monsters who stole you from the arms of adoring parents, transported you via rail like cattle to the complex where they stripped you of your clothes and your dignity as they doused you with insecticide, chopped off your hair, stealing what pride you had left so that you wouldn't cry as much when they took away your belongings, your photos of those who loved you, and even your names, your identities, bestowing you instead with the names of those who abused you, tortured you, forced you to work the hard labor. The children who looked like them had already been spared. Buried the bodies of your friends on campus without telling their families, even a century after the crimes were committed. And then still had the gall to tell you that only Jesus could save you from hell, as if you didn't already know what eternal damnation felt like, as if they weren't the ones who damned you. No, we are the ones who need an education to know that not all devils are named Satan or Adolf, that some of them act in the name of a nation that preaches equality and justice for all. And that's why I swear to expose my students to the truth that some still want to hide. Those who still want us to believe that America is a shining city on a hill and that we have been absolved of our sins simply because we ask for forgiveness. No, I'm not asking to be forgiven. You deserve better, more than I could ever give you, more tears than I could ever shed. But I promise you this, they'll never stop me from telling your story. Until I am dragged away to jail or the grave, they will not win. You will never be silenced. So, you know, there's darkness all around us, but I think most people know me now to be a pretty happy, optimistic, friendly person who's always ready to welcome anyone, all of my students, all family, strangers. I generally want to be a positive light in people's eyes. So how do I get to become this in spite of all of that? Well, there are a couple of things I want to talk about in the last couple poems. I have 3 to go, I guess. But one of the people that I need to talk about is someone that if I talk too much about, I'm going to cry, and I don't want to do that. I want to read a poem that was inspired by my wife. She is not only the person I love, she's my best friend, and she, they say you don't meet your heroes. My wife is my hero. I'm married to her, and we get along just fine. This piece is called To My Sculptor. Your legal blindness is such an injustice. for so many reasons. I have been brought to tears thinking of how your broken eyes make it impossible for you to read great poetry and art you create so well without a magnifying glass. How they make it harder for you to notice the thankful facial expressions of so many clients who you've been able to embrace the sunshine again, to see just how much our daughter looks like you, or how our son puts a smile on the face of everyone who meets him, and how you've molded me into a better man. You've rearranged how I perceive my countenance, giving me confidence, making it easier for me to show my crooked teeth when I greet others and in pictures, especially when I am in them with you, for I am happier than I've ever been. And thanks to you, I have no problem showing it. You've reconstructed my posture, improved my ability to keep my head held high, my chin up, so that I can avoid obstacles a little easier as I walk through the world, and to stand my ground in the presence of the evil around us. And when folks try to bring me down, including saying no to those who find it as easy to ask for favors one day as it was to slander me for no reason the day before. You've remodeled me into a form more malleable, one that isn't so rigid, one that allows me to not always be so stoic, to not feel like I have to hold everything inside in fear of collapsing and looking weak. I'm now waterproof, and not even my own tears can destroy me thanks to your efforts to recraft me into something more alive, more human. And you reforge the area around my squinty eyes to be able to see that despite the fog that surrounds us, distorting our vision daily, the world is good, and that most of its people are too. That on the darkest of days, there is always still a reason to look forward to tomorrow. That even after suffering the worst of losses, I'll never be completely defeated as long as I have your heart to lean on. And when I fall, to take comfort in knowing that you're strong enough to carry me home. I wish I could somehow redesign your beautiful brown eyes so that you could better see how you've remade me into something I once couldn't believe, that my face is one worth gazing upon, and that I can be as strong as I am caring, even while wearing my heart on my sleeve, and that no matter how lonely I feel, I am never alone. But just know, my forever love, that I see you for all that you are, and for as long as I live, I will work to construct a life for you as incredible as you are, as incredible as the one you've sculpted for me. Something else, thank you. Something else that has always inspired me, gives me hope in the world, is the arts and the artists. Throughout my 20s, art is one of the big things that helped me get through it. And it's still, I look at the arts today and I use the inspiration from the artists around to know that in spite of that darkness, there is a light. We just have to look for it, find it, celebrate it, and forbid anyone to cancel it. The arts and the humanities are essential to being human, and we need to keep it that way. This piece is called Thank You for Helping Me Learn How to Be a Real Man. And it was written inspired by the songs and words of Jason Isbell. Thank you for telling us that you don't know what being a real man means, because now I don't feel so alone. I've always preferred guitars over guns, and it made me an outcast. Growing up in a town where schools choose to celebrate deer season over Dr. King, violence and death over peace and love. Thank you for helping me understand that it's okay for men to cry, to be vulnerable, that strength isn't always about sucking it up, keeping up a granite countenance when inside you're a house of cards on a windy day. For telling me in rhyme that my day will come, that even on the hardest of days, to remember that things will get easier, that they can do so without the bottle or pills. Thanks for helping me see that, as beautiful as the open road can be, there is no shame in being tired of traveling alone, but also for showing me that a real man lets a woman drive too, that no relationship can thrive when one person is relegated to the passenger seat, and that when the road gets rocky, you can't just run away with your eyes closed, that if you want her to be your crutch, when you can't stand on your feet, sometimes you better be willing to put her first, to let her take the wheel. And thanks for showing me that real strength is not found in a clenched fist, but in your character, and selflessness over selfishness, and asking what you have done to help others instead of what others have done to help you. That real men aren't afraid to stand up for what they believe in, that they don't just shut up and sing, but that they also don't need a club or a sword when a pen, a paintbrush, a microphone will send a louder message, one that solves problems instead of starting them or making them worse. You need to know that I am listening, that you aren't just writing sad songs, riffing on that 59 Les Paul, giving the audience a 90-minute escape from their everyday realities. You aren't just a rock star, an artist, or a storyteller. You're a healer, an inspiration, an educator. And thank you for helping to teach me how to be a better husband to my wife, father to my children, and man, a real man in a world that needs them. Thank you. Thank you. I'd like the old poems I had to drag out. All right. And it's perfect timing. All right. I have one final piece that I'm going to read, and it's also on the topic of the arts. Like I said, there are a lot of forces out there that want to cancel them, and I don't think it's any accident. Artists have always been at the forefront of positive progress and change, not just in this country, but in the entire world throughout our entire history. And I always tell people that if you see someone that is trying to cancel the arts, that's a bad sign, and you need to pay attention. We need to keep the arts alive. We need to keep living the arts, loving the arts, keeping the legacies of artists past alive and building on them. Artists like Theodore Roethke, and artists that will be around in this country and in the world for years to come. This is a bit of a fight message for that. And the piece is called Make Art Dangerous Again. Make art dangerous again, like Twain roasting the KKK at the height of its powers, calling them cowards who only find courage in a crowd with other half men under masks again. Like Gilman and Chopin, pondering a world without men, that greater happiness and freedom could be found when a woman wasn't bound to a husband and his last name again. Like Hughes, too, seeing America, acknowledging what Whitman wouldn't, and making sure the nation read his page for English B, that its blinders were torn off, and that it had to admit that Black people were less free again. Like Guthrie, arming himself with plain-spoken speech against fascists and greedy capitalists who were willing to let the poor starve in alleys and ditches just so they could keep lining their pockets again. Like Ginsburg howling against conformists to save the best minds of his generation from those who crushed their spirit and dreams and keep them imprisoned by rules in a suburban hellscape again. Like Hendrix setting fire to his guitar, literally and metaphorically, when he blistered the Star-Spangled Banner at Woodstock, raising awareness to bombing overseas and injustice at home again. And like Banksy, still creating with a vilified medium in the faces of closed-minded squares, forcing them to look directly at what's wrong with the world and the authoritarians who choose to keep art in museums and the public ignorant again. So pick up your pens, guitars, brushes, your spray paint. Keep up the good fight with words instead of fists, and let's raise hell so that we don't end up living there, so that we can keep the promise alive, so that one day things will truly be great again.
That was amazing.
Thank you.
We have a few minutes left. Do you all have questions or comments?
Yeah, I was wondering, does anyone have any questions? Yes, sir.
So I've read most of your whole all of your work, and I'm always curious because like your prior collections were a mixture of fiction and poetry. What made you choose for Lost in America just to have that be entirely a poem collection?
It's mostly just because I wasn't feeling inspired to write fiction. And it's funny because if you go back to my 20s, I absolutely hated writing poetry. I really didn't really think much of it. It's the only B in college I ever received was in creative writing poetry. But I met Amanda, my wife, in that class, so it all worked out. It's funny because I don't know when it happened because I was always a fiction writer, but really even starting with Fries, the American Fries, my first book, the process just going through it, and I kept writing and writing, and I just found myself writing more poetry. I don't know why that shift happened, but it did, and I just turned out a book of poems, and I haven't written a fiction piece in a while. So, which thank you for prompts that you sent me, by the way. Did anyone else have any questions? Yes, Amy.
Over the years, the poetry workshops you've given us is wonderful. And as Sharon said, you listen carefully, you make the right comments and so forth. And often you don't read your own stuff. But I encouraged you because you had sent me a copy of your poem about and it just wakes your poetry are announcements that wake us up, like shake us sometimes to get the point. Do you have that in any of your books?
I do. I have it. It originally was in American Fries, but I combined a lot of my work with American Fries and American Reality, my second book. So I don't have American Fries with me, but I do have Slice of American Pie, and that poem is in this book.
But that one really hooked me. It really did. So thank you. I do have that book too, so I'll get out again.
Thank you, Annie. Yes, Stella.
Can I come up there and ask that question?
Sure.
What made you get into writing? Like, what made you start writing books and stuff?
Honestly, a bad breakup. The breakup that is alluded to in Fight of My Life was actually what strayed me very briefly away from teaching as a career field. I was down and out, I was sad, depressed, kind of like the stuff I was talking about in that poem. And I was looking for a way to get through school faster. And I was looking at what SVSU had to offer through the English program because I was already really way through that program. And I thought, well, if I'm not going to teach, I'll do journalism. And the SVSU didn't have one, and still doesn't, I don't think, have a journalism program. And I thought I saw creative writing there. I thought to myself, and it was stupid. I'm like, well, that's kind of like journalism. No. But I got into those classes and I wasn't very good, but I really slowly but surely fell in love with the process of creating. It made me a better reader, not just a better writer. And then, I met some cool people. I met your mom. And then that creative writing background went on really be a key point that made me get the job at SASA. And then I got inspired by my students there all of a sudden to start writing again. And even with the creative writing background, I honestly don't think I would be writing today if it wasn't for my SASA students. So it's a long trail, a long path, but that's what it was. Real quick, yeah.
So when you were choosing your job, what since you were writing, did that make you go into English?
Oh, I always do. I was going to do something with English.
Okay.
Yeah, that was definitely my choice. Yes, Gigi.
You have the greatest t-shirt. Do you have those?
No.
No, I don't have them specially made, but I find them. Like I find them on sometimes it's through social media. This shirt is actually was made by the Absolute Victory Everyday brand. It's a Black-owned company. I think they're based out of Atlanta, and I wear Absolute Victory Everyday shirts all the time because not only do I want to support that business, but it's also like a message I believe in. Like you gotta approach every day like you're gonna win. That's a good attitude. And then I saw this shirt the other day, and I'm like, oh my god, I need this. And so I try to find messages that have cool shirts with messages of being positive and that kind of thing. So I just look around. Fine. Thank you. Anyone else? Right.
Thanks for
Thank you, everybody.
Jared, this was really wonderful. Right. Well, for all our folks out there in TV land, we're going to disconnect you now. So thank you for being here online. And the rest of you guys, please have some pie and coffee and